I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Mayfield, do you have your computer up? Are you ready? Could you read our board priorities?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Not because my computer's up, because I have a little heavy here. All right. Davenport School Board established the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you very much. And Director DeSalvo, will you please read our mission and vision statements?
I'd be happy to. Our mission statement is that we will enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And our vision statement, education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our showcase, Superintendent Tate.
Tonight we have Williams Intermediate School, and Garrett, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about our service learning class that we created. It's a new elective class where we have students that are doing some things at Williams and then going across the street to Adams to work with elementary students. It's the first year we've done it. It's new, so we hope to expand it more, get more kids involved in the future. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Matt Stroop, who's a social studies teacher, and Kristen Huggins, the associate principal, and the students from Williams to come up. And then we also have Mrs. Laura Finn, the principal at Adams, and a student from Adams.
Hi, I'm Kristen Huggins, the associate principal at Williams. This idea kind of started with a scheduling issue. We wanted to have more opportunities for kids. Rob happened to come over to our building and mention something about having kids working at Adams or Williams. So we thought it would be a great idea. It helps the younger kids become connected to school and see kind of what their future is going to be in middle school. And it helps those middle schoolers really play a part in our community and see what they are able to accomplish by helping others. So I'll let Mr. Stroop talk about kind of the details about what he does in his class.
Thanks. Good evening. I'm Matt Stroop. I'm the supervising teacher for the service learning class. And just a brief overview, we have 62 students currently enrolled in the class. That's across 3 class periods. And they interact with 37 cooperating teachers, 15 of those at Adams and 22 of those back at Williams. Students are assessed 3 ways. They're assessed on professionalism from their cooperating teachers. That involves attendance, work ethic, communication skills, and reinforcing the Boys Town well-managed skills in both buildings. They also write their own weekly reflections on their observations and their learning. And they also have bi-quarterly presentations, midterm, end of quarter, where they come back and they present to me as well as other service learning students who are called back that day. In addition to this, they have participated in the Davenport community through volunteer opportunities, once with the Gigi's Playhouse 5K fundraising run for Down syndrome awareness, as well as they have participated at the JB Food Pantry, or the Davenport Food Pantry located at JB. A couple things that I believe this program ingrains in these students is that it helps them develop the skills of professionalism that will serve them well down the road. As well, they serve as role models at Adams for students who are beginning their journey through the educational system and serve as a positive role model for those kids. And with that, I would like to introduce Marissa Stolfa, who is one of our service learning students.
Hi, I'm Marissa Stolfa, and I'm here today to tell you about student service learning. I help Miss Jeannie with her kindergarten class at Adams Elementary School, and I have learned many things about student service learning. One thing I've learned is that it's very important. I've learned many important life skills, such as problem solving, effective communication, how to build great relationships, and different ways to help people. Helping others has taught me how to help different people in different ways. For example, if a student only understands how to do addition by using a visual model, then I could show the student a separate picture with two separate pictures with 2 cars in each picture. Then I could show them that when you put the 2 pictures together and count up the cars, there are 4 cars. Lastly, I would show them the example in the form of an equation. I would write 2 + 2 = 4 and show the student how the visual model compares to the equation. Helping others has also taught me that it can help relieve stress from the people that you're helping. One last thing I've learned about helping others is that the people you help really appreciate it and that I really like it. The last part of service learning is the best part of service learning is getting to interact with the kids and make new relationships. I really like getting to make new relationships because I like to get to know as many people as I can. Getting to feel appreciated and like I did something good is also the best part of student service learning. Thank you. Now introducing Kylie Devore.
Hi, my name is Kylie Devore, and I work in Miss Basala's fifth grade classroom. I've learned many different things and life skills that will help me in the future in student service learning. I've learned patience, definitely working with the kids because they're learning stuff that I've already known for quite a while. So, I have to be patient and help them. And so that definitely has been a skill I've learned. And I've also learned new relationships to build with the children, ways that there are differences with us and how to interact with them differently than how I interact with my friends. Student service learning is really helpful. I think that the kids really enjoy it, and they ask a lot of questions about middle school, and I like helping them with what they'll be experiencing next year. The best part about student service learning has to be the relationships I'm building with the kids and getting them excited for middle school. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So now here comes Michael Perez.
Hi, I am Michael Perez. I work with Ms. Reichert's kindergarten class in Adams, and the best thing about this service learning is that no matter what these kids learn, I will help them with everything that they will need for the rest of the year and the years for them to come. The best thing is it's fun. They love me. Mostly because I can tie their shoes for them. But other than that, these kids are amazing. They listen to me. They do what I say. I help the teacher with all their papers, sorting them out, all that. And it's amazing. It's fun. And I wish I can do this every year.
Hi, my name is Presley Huggins. I'm a 4th grader at Adams. I like the big kids in my class because she helps the teacher and she helps on the computers.
And I'm Laura Finn, and I'm the principal at Adams, and I would have to say that we are extremely fortunate to have this opportunity working with the service learning project here, connecting us and Williams is awesome for our kids at Adams as well as all of our teaching staff. I think they're really, really appreciative of the opportunity. And like Mr. Eagle and the rest of the group back here, we're hoping this program increases also. So thank you so much.
questions or anything?
Yeah, I imagine there'll be a few comments. Anything from the board? Director DeSalvo.
Marissa, Kylie, and Michael, what grade are you in? All in eighth. Do y'all want to be teachers when you finish high school? I think you should be, because I think you're doing a really good job right now. So keep up the good work. Keep teaching. Keep mentoring and tutoring, even when you get into high school, because there will be a need for that every step along the way. So continue to do that. Clearly, you're very good at it. So thank you for what you're doing. Presley, you're the cutest little thing I think I've seen in a long time. So I'm really glad that you're enjoying your service program here, because you got some really good helpers, don't you? All right. Well, thank you. Great program here, and I hope it does keep going and goes to other schools too, because I think you're in a great place right now. So thank you.
Anybody else? Director Hayes.
How many days or hours do you do this in a week? Do you go every day or every day for a couple hours a day? For one period? Okay, now I noticed the two of you said you like the relationships that you're building. And Kylie, you spoke on the patience. I clearly know about that patience thing because I had some kindergarten JAs, so I know how that works. So I congratulate you for doing what you do.
Director Potts.
Yeah, Michael, you said it was fun, right? Yes, and that's the key. Great teaching, good teachers, it's fun. You have fun doing it. And if you're having fun doing it with kindergartners, you'll have a great time as a junior high school teacher because they're a lot more fun, and they'll get your jokes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Director Mayfield.
It's kind of interesting listening to what's going on and what you're doing. I want to tell you a little story that something that happened to me about a year and a half ago. I travel around to a lot of smaller towns around here, within 80-mile radius anyway. And I was having coffee with some farmers one morning. And we were talking about all the problems that the schools are having and what could be done to change them. And somehow we got on the subject of the one-room schoolhouse. And some of the guys that were sitting there began to tell me about what about those days that the older students used to teach younger students and the effect that it had. And I said, you know what? I think that's a great thing that could be done today, not just yesterday. And lo and behold, here you are doing that. You're the one-room schoolhouse. You're going over to where the young ones are, and you're helping each other. Now, many would think that you're just teaching them, but actually, they're also teaching you, because you cannot be a teacher without learning from whoever you're teaching. Would you agree with that? And that's what many of your teachers has done, as you've been teaching over there with the kindergartners or the fifth graders. They're learning, but you're learning too. One other little story here. I have 7 kids. 5 of them were living with me at the time. And I used to go around in the neighborhoods of different organizations, Lydia House, United Neighbors, down at Community Center. Anyway, I would have my kids go and help me. And at that time, the question would always come up, why do we have to do this? You know, it's okay if some stranger asks you to do it and you do it with them. But when your parents want you to do this thing is, why do I have to do it? Well, they didn't really agree, but they were good at what they were doing at the time. And let's fast forward 20 years later. They all, of those 5, 4 of them became college teachers that taught. And I think the only reason why they were able to do that, because they were exposed at a very young age of being able to do that. And I think it helped them to learn when they were teaching someone else, because as a teacher, you get to see all kind of things going on in the classroom. You see the kids that need more help. You see the kids that need less help. But most important, you get to see it for yourself, and you get to place yourself in that situation. And then you know what you need to do to help yourself. And so I think it's great what you're doing. And when you look back on this in 20 years, you're going to be amazed at how that helped you become the person that you're going to be in the future. So thanks for what you're doing. It's great.
Anybody else? Director Gosa.
I just want to say you guys did a really good job. I really like your hair with the different colors in it. And stepping up on the chair, that was a great touch. So keep up the good work, guys.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all very much. It was great to listen to all of you and to hear the wonderful things you're doing. Thank you very much. All right, Superintendent Tate, do we have student board reports?
We do. Andrew?
So, last Thursday we had our winter sports kickoff for our 2018 season. And this week is our dance team state week. So they'll be competing on a Friday in Des Moines for the state competition. And then we also started our blood drive, which will be on December 14th. And for sports, our boys basketball team had won their scrimmage yesterday, beating DeWitt by 13 points, and our girls have their first game tomorrow at home. Oh, and another thing, my boss had got his car stolen yesterday. So if you see a Ford Focus 2008 with Viking stickers and a Bettendorf sticker, it's notify the police.
Don't do that. Our boys' first basketball game of the season is this Friday at Dubuque Senior, and we also have these autism awareness shirts that we're going to begin selling pretty soon. We usually do a shirt every year to help out a charity, and this year Student Council chose to promote autism awareness and help with early diagnosis. The ribbon for autism awareness is a ribbon made of puzzle, and the colors are teal, royal blue, red, and yellow. And the shirt has an American flag on the front with the ribbon going through it, and on the back there's a devil head with puzzle pieces on it.
This year's blood drive is going to be December 5th, so we'll have that coming up pretty soon. And we, kind of like Adams, are starting with our Mckinley Mentors this week. And basically it's a bunch of tag kids and some other kids that go to McKinley once a week for the rest of the school year, and we get there at 7:15 and help these kids that may not have the best situations at home or lack of role models. And we help them early in the morning and then walk them to class at about 7:40 and just try to build a relationship with to help them understand the importance of school and what it can do for you in your life.
Thank you, students. Your input's always interesting and important.
All right, we'll move on to board reports. Are there any? Director Gosa.
Last week I got to go to the Breakfast with Buddies at Fillmore. And let me tell you, that was a heck of a party. It was pretty packed. I mean, you know you're throwing a good party when you have the Davenport PD show up. And the fire department was there, as well as the mayor, Frank Klipsch. So it was a good time. Ate breakfast with my daughter, went in and checked out her classroom and stuff. Incidentally, her teacher I went to high school with, so my daughter thought that was pretty weird.
Thank you. Any other reports? Director Hayes.
I had a musical program that I attended at Garfield, which was pretty nice. We also attended, a few of us, the Iowa School Board Association convention, which was amazing. We had a little gimmick, I guess you would call it. It wasn't a gimmick as in ha-ha, but it was kind of awareness to bring awareness to the other district as how much money they were losing with the funding formula as it currently is. And it was just kind of nice to see how many people were stopping at the booth to get their little checks of how much money. And a lot of people, I guess, were kind of almost awed by it. It's one thing to know that you're losing money, but when you see the check with that amount written on there and how much you're losing in equity and transportation and your property tax, they were really just kind of floored by seeing those actual numbers broke down where they could understand it. So thanks to Rachel and Dr. Tate and whoever was the brainchild behind this, because I feel that it really worked out well. And people, I was out kind of walking around sending them to the booth to get their dollars, and they were almost like, are you kidding me? And they rushed over, and sure enough, they were getting their dollars, and just kind of amazed at seeing the dollars and cents that they were losing with this formula and equity.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Well, we'll continue on then with communications. I don't think I have any open forum requests tonight. So, but open forum is very important to us, and it's a time for members of the community to give input at board meetings regarding school district issues or concerns. And we always look forward to people in our community bringing forth these issues, and it gives you an opportunity to speak directly to the board. And at a board meeting, this is all recorded as well, and you'd get a chance to be on TV as well. So, anything you can, if you want to bring it to our board, try and get to the meeting a few minutes early, and we have board open forum request forms on the back table, and you can fill those out and give them to the board secretary prior to the meeting would be great. We'll move on to upcoming events. And Director Gosa, would you please read those for us?
On November 28th at 7:30 p.m., the holiday concert will be at the Adler Theater, and I would encourage everybody to go. I go every year with my daughter. It's our daddy-daughter date night. It's a great time. December 4th at 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. December 11th, 6 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. Only one regular meeting in December. December 25th and 6th is a holiday, so we will be closed. December 29th and January 1st are closed as well.
All right. Thank you very much. May I have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I make a motion that the following resolution be adopted. That we adopt the following resolution from the administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of November 9th, 2017 through November 22nd, 2017. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the period November 9th, 2017 through November 22nd, 2017.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right. We'll call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to just bring to the attention one of the articles in our recent highlights that comes out every week on Friday, and it was about Davenport students which went to the State Thespian Festival. In fact, the headline is Dominate the State Thespian Festival. We had Central Northwest attended at the University of North Iowa on November 10th and 11th, and Central's Savannah Pickett won first place in sound design. Hunter Envet won first place in lighting design. I.J. Williams won first place for his monologue. 7 Central students, Lucas Thomas, Nicole Maitland, Jeremy Weinstein, Peyton Reese, Joe Lassier, Hunter Envet, and I.J. Williams received superior rankings and moves them on to International Thespian Festival this summer. And Central's Next to North and Norse, Peter and the Starcatcher were 2 of the only 4 main stage shows performed at the festival. So just wanted to let everybody know about that good news, and that completes my report.
Thank you. We'll move on to other items requiring action. Now, this first item, 9.01, approval of Brady Street Stadium turf replacement and renovations project, was the motion was originally made at the last regular meeting, and it was postponed until this meeting. And board members, you can see that there's a recommendation from the superintendent regarding this particular issue and regarding the timing of the discussion. But for us to do anything about it, we really need to get the motion on the table, and then we can discuss what we want to do with that motion. So may I have a motion regarding the approval of the Brady Street Stadium turf replacement and renovation project?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation for the Brady Street turf replacement and renovation project with a 6-lane track and project budget of $2.039 million.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I would like to move that the proposed recommendation be moved to the 8-lane track. And I want to amend this.
You want to amend the motion that the motion be that the administration recommends the board approve the Brady Street Stadium turf replacement and renovations project with an 8-lane track and a project budget of $2.039 million, or you want to change that too?
That would be changed to 2.488.
488. So you're moving to amend the original motion.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Is there a second
second
to
that
the
one also.
amendment? All right. Is there discussion regarding the amendment? Director Mayfield.
I just have a question about the amount. Is that what has been suggested that it will cost to renovate the track to an 8 as well as refurbish I was not here at this meeting.
Right.
I was out of town.
Right.
So.
Yep. So
I'm just trying to be
Mr.
sure
Maloney
that-
is coming up to explain.
The 6-lane track and associated renovations, including design, was a total of $2.039 million. The 8-lane track, including the associated renovations and design fees, is $2.488 million.
Okay.
Did
that's
you have
what I was
anything
asking.
more? Okay. Any other discussion regarding this amendment? Director Beck.
I just had one question. In some of the reading that I've done, it appears that if we do expand it to 8 lanes, we would need to move some of the other things like the long jump pit. Is that the case, or can we fit the 2 lanes in without making many changes to?
The long jump pit would stay in the same location. It would get new covers.
Okay.
As part of the renovations to the entire project.
Okay, so it's really just expanding the track. It wouldn't require
It
major
may
changes.
require relocation of an existing sidewalk at the south end,
Mhm.
a few feet farther south.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? I'm going to just say that in reading the superintendent's email from November 14th, where he does recommend that the board postpone the original motion, and I think that if the motion is amended, and certainly the board can do what it wants with respect to that motion, although the superintendent has asked for additional time to present additional information prior to the decision making. And I just want to make sure that everybody on the board is aware of all of that. And I think that making the do you have that, Director? Okay. I think that making the motion to go to 8 lanes prior to listening to what the administration has to present, it just feels awkward to me unless the intent of the board is to go ahead and vote on the whole thing tonight. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, we'll vote. Oh, Director Beck.
I just want to clarify, is there information that we did not receive last week or this week that would be important to have before?
I'd like to let the superintendent answer that. I believe that I created a degree of confusion when I discussed it, and I think that that was part of the reason for the administration wanting to make their presentation, but I'll leave that to the superintendent.
And that's true, because the last discussion we wove in energy projects, which then wove in the 10-year plan, and what I wanted to do, if the board needed to hear that information, is that the next committee of the whole is talk about, we're going to give you an update at that time about the energy plan, where we are, what the future looks like, and then how that fits into the 10-year plan. And there was some discussion about how the track and it would affect our energy projects and therefore our general fund. So I just want to make sure the board didn't have any questions, and we really needed a lengthy discussion to do that. It's really up, if that's not needed and the board wants to vote, then that'd be up to you. We still will at the next committee of the whole. We're going to give you an update on energy efficiency projects as well as the 10-year plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Mayfield.
I guess I'm not connecting very well because I was not here at the last meeting. But of importance from my perspective on what I've been able to obtain information-wise, we have a facility that practically, I wouldn't say practically, all of our junior highs and our high schools use. So we're exposing a lot of our young people to the facilities there. And I think it's very important that we make sure that it's in the safest condition, simply because it's our young people. Now, is it possible to put it off for a longer period of time? that might be the possibilities. So, and I'm not going to ask you to go through all the background that you've gone to up to this point. But my concern would be the students first. And I'm talking about their physical safety. And in their physical safety, I think it's very important that we do what we can to keep them as safe as possible. And that's more to do with the football field than it does with the expansion of the track. But with the expansion of the track, if we're able to bring a different level of track to the Davenport schools, I think it makes a big difference for the community as well. Because with that, should I say, expansion, also comes more people, hopefully more opportunities for the city of Davenport as well. So I just wanted to state that was my thought. I do support the expansion, and I've heard many of the, I think we need more than that. It's not that I'm not at this time backing other plans, it's just that I believe we had to take care of what we have now, and definitely the safety of the students. So.
Anything else? Couple things I do want to address that I think that the the amendment on the table is simply to change the motion from a 6-lane track to an 8-lane track. And I would ask Mr. Maloney, does increasing the number of lanes have anything to do with safety? And especially, is there a sense of urgency to increasing to 8 lanes that would affect safety?
The difference between 6 and 8 lanes would have no effect on safety.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Director Gosa. Okay, all right. Although, no, I'll let you interrupt my train of thought. Go ahead.
Perfect. I get where he's going with this, so I'm just going to nip it right now. If you do the 8 lanes now while you already got to do it, it's going to be more cost effective than doing it later on, correct?
Well, any resurfacing or refurbishing of the track necessarily is best done at the same time that you do the artificial turf, because of the adjacency and the relationship of one to the other and so forth. So you get to make the decision every 10 or 12 years whether you want to expand to 8, unless you wanted to do it at a much higher cost.
Okay. So you get more bang for your buck doing it all at once?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Andrew, did you have something?
So 8-lane tracks are probably better because they last longer, because when people do like straightaway sprints, like during practices, they can use those other 2 lanes instead of using the 6 more than you say 8. So you have more lanes to run in. It's just better and it lasts longer because you're not using the same lanes over and over again. So
Thank you. Anything else? I'll go ahead and continue where I was going, which is not quite what Director Gosa thought. Part of my concern is simply the amount of additional money. It's almost $500,000 extra dollars for the increasing to 2 lanes. And the 10-year plan originally had the turf replacement project, correct?
Yes.
With the 6 lanes.
Yes.
And the acting athletic director at the last meeting recommended not putting in the additional 2 lanes. Is that correct?
That was correct.
Okay. And the way I remember the conversation was that the high school ADs supported adding the 2 lanes.
Mr. Scott was in
Right.
touch with
I mean, that's the way I recall it. And my concern is that a couple of things. One is that the superintendent has simply asked for more time to explain all this stuff. The vote, if it were consistent with his request, would be on December 11th instead of tonight. And And frankly, my biggest concern is that this additional $500,000, not that it would be spent, but that it's coming from our 10-year plan where we have generally said that we've got all of our money allocated. And so those are things I believe that $500,000, this might be the right priority for it. It may be that there are other projects, other things. I don't know where you're getting the money from. When I've asked for money in the past for other activities, the way that I've understood it is that we don't have money available. And so it looks like this was a kind of a, I don't want to call it an ad hoc request, but it came up late in the program and it was never part of your 10-year program, right? The 8 lanes?
That's correct.
Okay.
The current 10-year program was
Right.
to redo the existing track.
Right. And so I just want to be really, really careful. I think the board understands enough. We've got a lot of issues with respect to our budget, but also with respect to our save and pebble funds, that we have to be diligent in looking at where we spend them. And I think that we have to be really careful if we just say yes to this, yes to this, yes to this. What projects are high priority, what are lower priority? And I think without having the discussion about this in the context of our whole 10-year plan, for me, it's insufficient to simply say we should approve it because some people want it. So I'll leave it at that. Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, we'll vote on the amendment. And this is the amendment which recognizes the Brady Street Stadium turf replacement and renovations project, and it would amend it to with an 8-lane track and with a project budget of $2.488 million. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
As much as I would love to have it, I can't support it right now with the budget. No.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is no. The motion passes, and the amended motion is now on the table. So that original motion, trying to keep track of all this. I believe the original motion was made by Director DeSalvo, and it was seconded by Director Gosa. So that motion now is on the table, which is to accept the administration recommendation that the board approve the Brady Street Stadium turf replacement and renovations project with an 8-lane track and a project budget of $2.039 million. Is there any, I'm sorry, $2.488 million. Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I think part of the reason I'm having a hard time with this is that it needs to be done. The turf needs to be redone. The track needs to be resurfaced, and sometimes that happens sooner than we budgeted for. It's kind of like when your car is getting old. Sometimes it just goes, and you got to get a new one. And as much as I would like to not spend the money, I don't think I can't, in good faith, hold up the entire project over this lane issue. So I guess I'm just trying to make the point that I am all for redoing everything. I would prefer not to add the 2 lanes, but if the project's going to fail because we can't agree on how many lanes there are, I don't think that's in the best interest of our students either. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any additional discussion? I would ask Mr. Maloney, is a 2-week, if this motion were not considered for 2 more weeks, how would that affect the project?
Well, the later we get the designs to bid in the year, generally the higher the cost will be. So we're not at a, it's not a critical point to have a 2-week delay. We've delayed from 2 weeks ago, whatever, already. So we generally say if you need 2 more weeks to decide, then we will make the very best use of your decision once it's made.
I was going to continue, but I'll go ahead.
I love the banter back and forth. So if we delay this, my question is, I'll use the central project. The auditorium was delayed, so then we had to find somewhere else for, I don't remember what the program was, but we had to find somewhere else for them to go, so that's extra incurred cost. So if this gets held up, will that add future incurred costs? Because if we're not able to get, because I know not just our schools use Brady Street Stadium. Does an Assumption and Ambrose as well. So my question is, the delay, if we keep delaying and delaying and delaying, does that delay the time the project will get done, and it could hold up other things, and then we have to find somewhere else? Or
It's necessary that the project execution window be May to August. That is a given. What gets snipped off is our time to design and prepare documents and do the preparatory work prior to getting it out to bid.
And if that happens, we might get change orders and stuff like that because everything wasn't.
It's always best to have sufficient amount of time for design.
Perfect.
Is there any other discussion? One of the things, Director Mayfield.
I guess I'm a little bit concerned here. I know about our concern financially, but I've sort of, and particularly since we're discussing the Pebble Fund, we've done a lot of construction. I know what we've done over at JB, and it said it's done at no cost to the general fund. But I think anything that we spend in the Davenport school system definitely affects our students. I questioned just not too long ago, because I know we're spending millions of dollars at JB. Now, as to where those funding comes from, doesn't affect the general fund. But now we're looking at something that directly, and I'm not talking about affecting the students financially, but affecting them safety-wise, particularly that field. And it's used by so many in the community. So whatever we spend on that, it's definitely worth it for the safety of our students. Now, it just so happens, if there is a need to expand to 8, it's easier to do while you're redoing the field. That we know, cost-wise, as we just heard, it makes a big difference. But I guess sometimes we run a little bit inconsistent as to how we save money. I questioned, I'm part of the Hilltop, that Hilltop wanted green space in front of JB. And of course, we put green space in, but it's unusable, as to how it was designed with all the concrete running through it as the green space that most envisioned. Now, was it put there and was it applauded by the neighborhood? I don't think anyone opposed it, but I do think the intent of green space was just grass. Kids, that's all they want was just space to play in the grass. But that didn't happen. We designed it totally different. It's a nice place to walk through maybe for some adults every now and then. But it's not the green space envisioned. So it concerns me when we talk about what we're doing for kids and it seems the outcome comes out a little bit different. It's more for the adults than the kids. And that's just one example right there. So I would like to see us do something for our students, for our young people. And we can say that everything we do is for them, but when it comes to that field and the safety of our students and people that are using it in the community, I think it's very important that it be a priority, that it not be something that's put off. If we can make it better for our community in the future by expanding to those 8 lanes instead of just the 6, and cost-wise, it's more effective to do that as we redo the football field. I think it's important that we do that now. If we just do it because it's going to look good, it's not good enough. We need to do it because it's needed. And I would like to see that done with what's out there. It is really needed, and it's a great opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? A couple things. Again, at the last meeting, it was presented by the acting athletic director that those additional 2 lanes are not needed. That was our athletic director recommendation. I think that it's too bad. It sounds like the board wants to move on this, in spite of the fact that the administration wants to give us more information. And I think the board, the difference between making a motion today and making a motion on the 11th is 2 weeks, and I would challenge anybody to say that that's going to create significant safety issues, or that it's going to create significant changes in the cost of the project, especially since the following recommendation from the last meeting was not postponed, and I think it was simply defeated, which means we can't even give the designs to the whoever's going to design that. Correct, Mr. Maloney? That next recommendation that you'd made at the last meeting. I don't remember the...
Yes, there's a second action item that was approval of the design contract.
Right. And so that's not on this agenda. So what the board can do if it decides that there is a sense of urgency in addressing this issue tonight, it can go ahead and accept that, and then there will be still no design work until the design proposal would be made at the December 11th meeting and presumably would be accepted. So I guess that's about it. Any other discussion? Superintendent, just let me ask, if we decide to accept this motion, then all of the information that you would be presenting at the committee of the whole meeting, would that be necessary?
Yes, because we need to give you an update on the energy efficiency projects, and that affects the 10-year plan, so we still intended to do that.
And does the 10-year plan affect this project?
Well, this project is part of the 10-year plan, so we will show you some adjustments based on this plan.
I understand the first recommendation, but the additional 2 lanes was not part of the 10-year project.
Correct, it was not.
Okay. All right, thank you. If there's no more discussion, we'll call for the vote. And this is the vote then to approve the Brady Street Stadium turf replacement and renovations project with an 8-lane track and a project budget of $2.488 million. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
No.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is no. The motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of Leggett roofing contract?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board approve administration's recommendations with the Leggett Architects for design of the 2018 central roof replacement contract in the amount of $79,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts? Yes. Director Mayfield?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding approval of ASC to JBY Phase 2 remodel project.
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the lowest responsible and responsive bid of $2,080,220 to Precision Builders of LeClaire, Iowa for the ASC to JB Young Phase 2 remodel project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
So the discussion that we just had about spending $448,000 out of the 10-year capital plan, now we're approving just over $2 million out of that same plan. And was this amount budgeted in the 10-year plan?
Yes, this project was budgeted in the 10-year plan at $5.851877 million. And with this bid package here, we're projected to complete at about 5.6 million.
I'm sorry, so what was the original
The original
target?
budget was 5.8 million, 5.85 million.
And we're going to come in at 5.6.
And we currently are projecting about 5.6 million.
So we're saving $200,000.
We were a little under budget on this one. There are a couple of things yet to be determined that will add a little bit of cost, but we expect to be under the 5.8 million.
And that 5.8 million, I think I asked this, I'm sorry, can I keep asking? In the last time we discussed this, I asked if this was on the 10-year plan, and we said yes, it was, because if we weren't moving to JB, we would be refurbishing this building and or JB to get it prepared for sale or repurposing, correct?
Yes.
So this isn't new or additional
There would have been some major renovation cost in this building to replace air conditioning and heating systems and some other things that were in the 10-year plan prior to the decision to renovate and relocate to JB Young and sell this building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Mayfield.
How long ago was the 10-year plan initially devised for?
There has been a 10-year
this?
plan for some decades in the district. The most recent project plan was amended and approved by the board last April after a March work session in which we discussed the energy efficiency projects. We made a number of revisions to the 10-year plan, delaying some projects in order to increase the amount of money available the next 2 fiscal years in energy efficiency projects.
So we're taking the money that was initially going to be used for this building and transferring that to JB. And I assume that plan was made initially. I say 10-year plan, but I'm sure it starts over or revised continually. I don't know if it started 10 years ago.
Every year or two, there are some revisions to the plan that are brought to the board for consideration based on changing priorities or increasing understanding about certain conditions in buildings or other related decisions that the board has made. Examples included the Fillmore project. Originally did not include pre-K. The board decided they wanted pre-K in neighborhood elementaries. That added about a little over $500,000 to the Fillmore project, and so an amendment was made to the 10-year plan to include those funds, and that's one example. Or of course, last March, April, when you made the decision to shift a significant amount of money into energy efficiency in order to save general fund dollars, that delayed some of the renovation addition projects that otherwise would have occurred next year or the following year.
Another example is, it was 3 or 4 years ago when security issues really became prominent. We moved up all of our security projects to get them done within 1 year rather than spreading them out after several, just because we felt the threat and we wanted to do it. So we're continually revising. In fact, when we come to you next week, it'll be again to look at things and make sure that we're following the philosophy of the board, and then at that time you can validate or move things around, and we just, it's a living plan.
Okay, well, I guess I asked that question because, we've been able to shift all the funding that we're going to use for this building to JB, so you're saying it's not costing any more than going into that building and having to put in many new objects that needed to be there versus what you'd have had to done to refurbish this building.
No, we will
Cost
have
is
spent more
basically the same.
at JB Young, but we were expanding the amount of square footage necessary for the administrative services that can't be accommodated in the current building.
So it is going to cost more there then.
It is going to cost more there than it would have to refurbish this building, yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. Make sure where I am. I'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding approval of amendment to purchase and sale agreement for 1606 Brady.
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the proposed amendment to the purchase and sale agreement for 1606 Brady, extending the due diligence period to January 2nd, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I was wondering if there was a reason for this.
The reason is that the pro forma budget that the developer has in mind includes certain tax credits that may or may not be in jeopardy here in the next few weeks, depending upon what the new federal tax bill, if passed, happens to include. And there is an application pending for these credits, but it could be affected by the tax bill.
Go ahead.
So does that mean that if they are affected, then the whole thing's going to fall through?
Maybe. Not necessarily, but maybe. It would depend upon, there's two different sets of credits the developer is eligible for. They could be they could be phased out over time. They could be cut off January 1st, and the developer likes the property and would like to find a development budget that works. But this, the historic tax credit in particular, would be a significant loss to their pro forma development plan.
Go ahead.
Is there not like a grandfather clause for that or something? If they were to purchase the property under the current law, it doesn't?
No, it would be the rules that are in effect at the tax credit applications haven't been approved yet.
Okay.
And ordinarily that would happen early next year. And so if those historic tax credits or the low-income housing tax credits were to be phased out, changed in some way, it could change his entire plan, and could, depending upon exactly what happens, could render his plan unfeasible.
Okay, so these aren't something that happens like when you close on the property or something like that. It's a separate entity, and you said it.
Closing wouldn't occur
Okay.
until after the tax credits were secured.
got
That's
it.
already in the purchase and sale agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Director DeSalvo.
So I would just encourage everybody to write your congressman and have them not vote in favor of this bill. I've been trying to reach out to a few of them myself.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this issue? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Mayfield. I'm asking for the vote on the approval of the amendment to purchase and sale agreement for 1606 Brady, and the administration recommended that the board approve the proposed amendment, which extends, which is for the purchase and sale agreement of 1606 Brady, extending the due diligence period to January 2nd, 2018.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to discussion items. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you. I've planned a rather lengthy report on our enrollment situation, and I've actually put together a committee to do this because we looked at various aspects of our numbers and came together to say, what does this mean, and are there things we can do about it? And the idea tonight is to just provide the board with an idea of the numbers and the data as we see it from several different perspectives, and also see if there's questions you have we haven't thought about, and we can certainly dig out the information. Mary has given you hard copy, and Rachel is actually going to put up on the screen for the audience the pages that we're working on. So the pages are numbered, so presenters, as you're talking about one of the charts, make sure that people know which that you're looking at. And the first set we want to look at are the numbers, which are certified enrollment from the state and comparisons, and trying to look at why, who comes into the district, who leaves the district, and for what reasons. And so Dawn Anderson-Rasher is going to be talking generally about the first 4 pages, and the idea here is stop her and ask questions as we go along, because some of this is fairly complicated, and I have to ask probably about the same questions every year, so there's no silly question. Just go ahead and ask it as it comes up so we can all understand what we have. So, Dawn, you start off.
Sure. This first graph is looking at the resident students in Davenport who attend our school district, where we provide the majority of the educational program. So they live in Davenport, and we provide their educational programs for them. And what this is doing is this is looking at October 1st in 2016, taking that list of students that were part of the certified enrollment, and then looking at October 1st in 2017, the list of students that were in that certified enrollment, and comparing the two. And so what I want to do is I really want to look at the blue part of the graph, which is looking at the students that came into our district. So they were not here on October 1st, 2016, but they're here now. They were here on October 1st on 2017. As you look across in that row, you can see that 1,095 of those were incoming kindergarten students or pre-IEP students, pre-K IEP students. 564 students came into Davenport from out of state. 307 came into the district from another Iowa public school district. 105 came into the district from an Iowa accredited non-public district. Other, which includes sometimes in our student management system, we have transfer unknown, or there's just some data there that we really don't know where they came from. It's probably an error in our data entry. Like, we'll have a student whose first time in Davenport was 8th grade, and in our student management system, it says that they're continuing in the same school district And we know that's not the case. So there was, in the pull-down menu, just the wrong thing was selected. We had 32 students who came from homeschool or a non-accredited school back into the school district. 36 students came to the district from out of country. 22 students were returning dropouts or in the Grad Alliance program. We didn't have any students come back to us that were incarcerated in a DHS program. And then I want to save the open enrollment. The students in open enrollment are not part of certified enrollment. They're another piece of the puzzle, but we did have 16 students that wanted to come into the school district in 2017. So that's what the blue graph represents, the students who were not here in 2016 but were here in 2017 and the reasons where they came from into the district. Now, if you look at the orange part of the graph, these are the students that left the district, meaning they were here on October 1st in 2016, but they were not here on October 1st in 2017. And as you can see, as you go through, 941 of those students graduated from high school. We had 606 students leave the district because they moved out of state. We had 421 students leave the district. They went to another Iowa public school district. We had 59 students who left the district for an Iowa accredited non-public district. 106 students that would be other. Sometimes we get in our student management system, it will say transfer unknown. The students just don't show up, they don't come. And the phone numbers have been disconnected and we have no way of knowing where they went. So in our student management system, it just says transfer unknown. We had 43 students that left the district to go to homeschool or a non-accredited school. 16 students left the district to go out of country. 195 students dropped out of the district. 6 students were incarcerated or attended DHS program. And then we also, in our open enrollment, we had 16 students that we allowed to open enroll out of the district. And so what you've got down below are the net differences for the last 3 years. So they can see that the difference between those that were coming into the school district, those leaving the school districts, that kind of gives you a net difference and kind of gives you some trend data for that.
And I should have started out. The difference in the certified enrollment between last year and this is about
209 students, correct.
9 students. And this year the state had estimated we were going to lose 300. In fact, we put together our budget on that, so we are better than the state projected, and they're projecting 150 for the next 3 years. So just wanted to provide that in the way of context.
Okay. So digging deeper into some of these students, especially those that went to another Iowa public school district, you can see down below in some of the notes, there were 421 students that moved out of Davenport School to another Iowa public school district. 166 of those students, or about 39%, moved to a Scott County school, which would be Bettendorf, North Scott, and Pleasant Valley, which means they actually moved their residence. They no longer live in Davenport. They now live in one of these other school districts. And then we had 76, or about 18% of the students, moved to another AA school, AA 9 school, which would be Clinton, Maquoketa, DeWitt, Bellevue, Easton Valley, Muscatine. Yes. Yes, they've moved their residence. They no longer live in Davenport. They've moved to another school district.
Hey, Don, excuse me, because
Yes.
you wanted us to interrupt, right? Mm-hmm. So this is first time I can recall seeing this. We may have in past years, but that 39% is pretty stunning, right?
Actually, it's pretty lower than last year.
Well, it might be lower, but it still is a big number.
Right, they've moved. They've actually physically moved from Davenport.
Right, they've moved.
Mm-hmm.
And where I'm going is that the city of Davenport and our district are trying to work together in so many different areas. And if I were the mayor of Davenport and I saw this, because I think it's not just that the students are moving from our district to those districts. You're saying that the families are moving from our district boundaries, mostly Davenport, and they're moving from Davenport to these other municipalities, right?
Correct.
And that's where I'm going with the alarming part. I think to me, that's a big number. I think the city should think about it. I don't know how that that's related to what the city's statistics are, but I just want to make sure I understood it right. And we haven't shared this with the city yet, right?
No, we haven't, but this is the format we've used in the last few years.
Okay, thank you.
And I know some of these people have been working with the city and with the committee and looking at enrollment that way. Maybe they will be able to answer when it gets to be their turn. And then of the 606 students who moved out of state, 279, or about 46% of the students, moved to Illinois. That could be right across the river, but it could also be anywhere else in Illinois. A lot of times they just say move to Illinois. I have no idea where they went, just that they moved to Illinois. And then 49 or 8%, they moved unknown. We don't know where they moved, but they moved out of state to another state. And then I've listed the other states where the other students have gone to, and you see it's a wide variety of states. There really isn't just one that stands out. But these are students that have moved out of state. So any questions on this graph? Bruce?
The open enrollment numbers, it looks like it's a wash.
Yes, I think this is the second year that we have changed our open enrollment policy. So now what we do is it's based on the number of students who want to come into the district is how many students we allow out of the district.
Do we know what percentage of those that may have moved to other Scott County schools have been denied open enrollment by any chance?
I haven't looked at that. I mean, that would be something that we could look at and see.
Well, Rachel has done some of that work, and when we get to her, she'll talk about that.
Okay.
Go to the next one because it starts into open enrollment.
Okay, the next one is looking at just open enrollment for the last 3 years. And I took over open enrollment about 2 years ago. And one of the things that I was interested in is what we call continuation, which means a student started in another school district, could be North Scott, Bettendorf, PV, one of the surrounding school districts, but they moved to Davenport. According to state law, they can continue in that former district of residence. And even though we have a diversity plan in our district, we cannot deny that open enrollment. So if you've been in another school district, you want to continue in that school district, you can do that. And then we also have another one where we cannot separate families. So if you have a sibling who has already been approved through our district for open enrollment, they have a sibling, that sibling is approved to go to the other school district also. And so you can see at least the last 2 years, I have some data there. In 2015 and 16, this is looking at certified enrollment, and this is cumulative. So this is kind of, we have, say, 13 students the first year open enrolled out. The next year we have those 13 students. We might have 40 more students the next year, and then another 20 the next year. So this is cumulative. So in 2015-16, we had 569 students who were open enrolled out of the district, and we had 74 students who open enrolled into the district. And then we have a lottery, which is based on our diversity plan. We approved 14 students to open enroll into the district that school year, but we approved 65 students to open enroll out of the district that school year. And then in 2016-17, you can see that that's when our policy changed. Overall, in 2016-17, we had 558 students that were open enrolled out of the district, 86 students open enrolled into the district, and then you can see that lottery. We had 16 that were approved to open enroll in. We had 17 that were approved to open enroll out. The reason why those numbers don't match is the 16th student had a sibling, and so we don't separate siblings, so the sibling was allowed to open enroll out also. So that's where the 17. But then this is the year I started to keep track of students that requested continuation. So in the 2016-17 school year, we had 34 students who were attending Davenport schools but moved out of Davenport but wanted to stay in Davenport schools. And we had 80 students who lived in another school district, moved into Davenport, but wanted to continue in that school district. And then we also had the siblings, where 5 siblings wanted to come into the district that we approved, and 26 siblings that were approved to leave the school district that school year. And then what I've given you here in 17-18, this is really through October 1st, 2017. That is the certified enrollment date. You can see we had 523 students that were open enrolled out of the district, and we had 89 students that were open enrolled into the school district. The lottery was 16-16. We approved 16 to come in. We allowed 16 to leave the district. And you can see so far, as of October 1st, we had 7 students who left Davenport schools but wanted to stay, so they continuation. And then we had 30 students who moved into Davenport but wanted to continue in their other school district. And then at this point, we have 1 sibling who wanted to come into the school district, and that was approved.
Don, the continuation portion, I just don't recall that in the diversity plan. Is it part of our plan?
It is not.
It is not.
Yeah. And there's
So-
nothing that we can do for continuation, or siblings have nothing to do with our diversity plan.
It's state law.
It's state law.
But open enrollment is state law too. So our diversity plan is only one of a few. I'm wondering about that aspect of it, because I don't recall there being any conversation on it. I just don't.
Oh, that's kind of why they were not our students to begin with, as Rob was saying, that they lived in another school district. So they lived in North Scott, but the family moved to Davenport. By state law, they can continue in the North Scott School District. And the diversity plan does not impact continuation at all. So we can't use our diversity plan.
It's just hard for me to imagine. I'll have to look at the plan, because I thought that we look at every student that moves one way or the other and how they affect our diversity in our buildings and maybe in the whole district. And so if a student is, and maybe I don't mean to take up any additional time. I'll look at it later and talk with you
I think
later.
continuation is really not part of the lottery or any of that process, the March 1st deadline. That continuation can occur any time during the school year. So if a family moves over the summer, they can apply for continuation. The state places it under open enrollment. I mean, that's the forms that the parents would fill out.
I have a question.
I was going to say, the question is, does the diversity plan trump the continuation part of the state law? So we need to ask that question.
The answer is no.
Well, we still ask the question.
Oh, I asked the state. When I first, because I was saying, well, we have a diversity plan, and I understand that, say you started the school year in a school district and you want to continue in that school district, but then next year would they have to apply for open enrollment? The state said no. That if they are started in a school district, they may continue in that school district.
I have a question.
Director DeSalvo.
So you said something that made me cringe a little bit. You said the continuation on their application, they're open enrolled. So in Mr. Scott's example, somebody that moved from North Scott to Davenport chose to keep their student in North Scott. Are we having to pay North Scott $6,446?
Yes. But it depends on when they moved. Also, I mean, that first year, we may not have to pay that if it's after the October 1st deadline. But for certified enrollment, then they would just be counted at North Scott. Say they moved to Davenport on October 2nd. We wouldn't have to pay for that, but the following year, as long as that family continued with open enrollment, then yes, we would have to pay that.
But those dollars are only received by the district because that student has shown up on the enrollment record.
Wait a minute, Rachel. We didn't hear what you said. Can you get your mic on?
We only receive dollars for that student because that student, it shows up on our enrollment record. So it flows through the district and to the receiving district. It's not taking from a current student.
Director Hayes.
Don, in addition to paying that, do we pay transportation as well? Or is the family responsible for transportation?
If they qualify for transportation, yes, we would pay transportation. Well, I mean, it's not transportation that you would think for every day. There is a dollar amount that open enrollment allows. It's about $480 some per student. So, yes.
Sorry, there's a whole bunch of people here. Director Gosa.
My question is, so if they do the continuation, now the district that they stay with, if they get more per student, do they still just get what we get, or do we have to make up that difference?
The state has $1 amount for open enrollment
Okay.
that every school district pays.
Okay, thank you.
Director Mayfield.
If this is a continuation because that student was in the original district
Mhm.
and they decide to move to Davenport, wouldn't it, they're not registered to the Davenport schools, I assume, first of all, is that true?
Correct.
So shouldn't those monies go directly to where they've been registering at versus coming to the Davenport schools and be redirected to those schools?
It's not how the state does its billing, it's where you reside.
It has nothing to do with where you go to school then,
No,
because that's, they wouldn't even know that person is in the Davenport school system. I shouldn't say in the school system, say that they live in Davenport if they're enrolled out at the other school.
well, both school districts have to approve. So, in other words, I'll get this from North Scott, they'll say, we have a continuation, a student's moved into Davenport, here's their address, and they have provided verification to North Scott of their address, or the other school district, and so, okay, we approve it, and then each year I send out to every student who's open enrolled, to the families to verify their address, email, phone numbers, and I do get some of those back, and when I get those back and someone say cannot deliver, I contact the other school district and say, hey, I have this student X who was living here, they are no longer living this, can you verify what their address is? And a lot of times other schools will come and say, oh, they moved to California. So, I take them off the list. Or they moved back to our school district, so then I take them off the enrollment list. I do contact every school district for billing twice a year and everything, just to make sure that those students are still attending that school district.
It just seems like unnecessary duplication when they're already in that district and they can coordinate between them, meaning the state and the school that's asking for a continuation, that it would come here and then the funds would come here and be transferred there. Maybe I'm too much common sense, but I don't understand why we are involved in that loop if they're just staying at the school they were at.
Dawn, I would say that the money is always sent to the resident school. Wherever the person is living is where the money has to be sent. And then after that, it's dispersed out, correct?
Mhm.
Is that the best way? The state follows that rule of sending the money to where the person lives. And then it's our responsibility to fill up with paperwork.
So we're basically just acting as a carrier for them since they never came to this district, period. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, there are. Anybody else? I'm stunned at this. And I don't understand how that student that has continued is not part of our certified enrollment, right?
That student is counted.
They are part of our certified enrollment.
Mhm. Because the other school district is claiming them as being open enrolled in from another district.
It may be, but I don't accept it. The early childhood program has a lot of flow-through dollars in it, where we have state money coming to our district that flows out to all of our partners, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Which seems almost similar to this. If we've got continuing students that are in North Scott or wherever they are, and the dollars are flowing from the state to us, in early childhood, doesn't the state give us the authority to collect 10% for administration costs? That's correct? So, and that's an acknowledgement by the state that there are legitimate costs associated with administering all that stuff, which is mostly flow-through dollars. And it just seems like common sense, as Director Mayfield was saying. I think that we have legitimate and actual costs associated with those flow-through dollars from the state through Davenport to another district to cover the costs of a continuing education student that is staying in that's living here but staying at another district. And wouldn't that be a reasonable assumption?
But every district has the cost, and it's the same way. I mean, those that are going open enrolled, the 16 students going to Bettendorf, North Scott, or wherever, we get the money, we send it to North Scott, they get some money, they send it to us. I guess we could argue about that, but that's the accounting system for the state, and everybody's doing it. Everybody's sending checks across the line to make it pot right.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that with respect to open enrollment, but this particular issue of continuing from another district strikes me as being significantly different. So, the other thing I wondered, because you said the state said that this is the way it is, as if they are the all-knowing, and I was curious if you could at least, well, anyway, could you at least tell me what organization indicated that this is the way it is?
There is a handbook for open enrollment, and he pointed the question and answer in the handbook that the state puts together. But who is he part of? Eric Heitz is part of the Department of Ed. Department of Ed.
So, and I would say publicly that they are not always correct. So, I'll leave it at that. I apologize for going on.
Okay.
Why don't we go to the next couple of pages?
The next one is looking at, it does say the Urban 8 network, and I guess I'm showing my experience here. In the 1990s, when the UEN was first established, it was the largest 8 school districts in the state, called the Urban 8. Now that other school districts are starting to see similar issues and concerns, it's been changed to the Urban Education Network. So that's just my experience showing there, the Urban 8. So these are the largest 8 school districts in Iowa, looking at K-12 enrollment and looking over the last 5 years to see how the largest school districts, how their enrollment has increased or decreased. This is looking at percent difference from the previous year. So it's taking this year, subtract last year, and then divide by the enrollment from the previous year to get that percent. Yes?
Have we looked into why the trends are the way they are? You know, Iowa City growing, Sioux City growing, Waterloo growing, Des Moines growing, Council Bluffs growing, and then Davenport and Dubuque in particular on the decline.
No, we haven't. I wouldn't even know how to start that. And we're trying to figure out why we're losing and what we can do, but I can't begin to analyze.
We haven't started looking into that yet.
No.
Okay.
Yep.
So, any questions with this graph? The next graph is looking at local school districts and their 5-year enrollment trends. And again, it's looking at that percent difference from the previous year. This is looking at Davenport, Bettendorf, Clinton, Muscatine, North Scott, and Pleasant Valley, looking at their 5-year enrollment trends.
No, and I really don't see myself doing that because I'm having enough trouble just analyzing what we're doing. I can't spend it on another district and analyze there. So.
Well, I guess I just want to know. I guess knowing why students are leaving is really part of this, because so many of the students that are leaving are going to these local districts. So I guess, yeah, we'd get at those questions just by finding out what our students are doing.
I can tell you that I have looked at housing starts in each of these jurisdictions and at housing starts per 10,000 residents and that sort of thing to try to understand. And the enrollment growth in Waterloo and Iowa City and Des Moines and the enrollment decline has to do with housing starts and the type of housing built. And I'll have more to say about that later.
Okay, other questions? Okay,
Well, I don't know if it's more of a statement than a question, but alluding to what they were just talking about, I think that if we're not attracting students, that's something we need to look into as to why. There has to be a reason why. And if we're not looking for the why.
We're looking at that. That's what this whole thing is about. She asked me about
I
other
wanted to
districts.
finish first before
Okay.
you answer. And if we're not focusing on that, then it's very hard to find the reason that it's happening. Because I too look at all these different cities that are having great fortune in attracting students. And that's the first thing to question is why. And I know we've asked the question, but we still have to research the answers to see why that's even happening, that we're not growing as they are. Whether it is housing, whether it is perceptions that are there, there is a reason why. And I think that's where we got to get to the bottom to find out what we need to do to reverse our trend of not attracting people. Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to make a recommendation to the board that when we say things, the administration is thinking about everything that we say. One of the best ways to get ideas like this to be further considered is to express the need for an agenda item or information request on the board request form, because then it will go to the agenda committee and the agenda committee can get it onto the agenda. And so it's very, very difficult. The administration can't take on all of these requests. I think it's doing its best to present us the information or to present that to the board, but please consider the use of the board request form. Thank you.
Okay.
And Rob Scott's going to talk a little bit about the longitudinal studies 5 and 6, and I hope the board understands that the question is, what the hell's happening and what are we doing about it? We're not just presenting information to you and just let it sit there. That's the next questions, and that's what we continually work on, because numbers are numbers unless you ask the right question. So and please, I think you'll see later on we have asked those questions. We're doing marketing, and I have some recommendations at the end. So Rob.
Great. Good evening. And I would just say on this current sheet, when we look at it, I was kind of approaching it from the standpoint of when we look at our Iowa assessments, we're always looking at cohorts, how they do from year to year. And so you'll see that I believe your copy is highlighted blue. We followed the kindergarten group from 2004 all the way to graduating last year. And so we were kind of following in a diagonal format, and you'll see that on the next page also. So for example, that group that came in, and I want to use it as 1,247 kindergartners. The next year they were at 1,222, so we lost 25 kids in that group. Now when I say we lost 25 kids, we know every year we have about 1,000 kids come into our district and about 1,000 kids leave our districts from what the other information you received. So, when you're talking 15,000, take 1,000 off, I mean, that's a pretty high percentage of in and out, and then our in and out was minus 25 when we get to that. I say that for the kindergarten group because that kind of tells me when I've done my projections and for getting ready, and I actually presented to the board years ago, you look at the group coming in as kindergartners, and that kind of influences you to what you're going to have for seniors because the trend is going to be pretty steady. If you look at our kindergarten group from 2004 to 2006, we were around 1,200 students. From 2007 to 2013, we were about 1,300, actually greater than 1,300. If you look at all those years, pretty close. It's not till just the last 3 years that you've seen the decrease in our kindergarten group. So when people say, well, this has been an ongoing problem, it really hasn't been an ongoing problem. We've been getting pretty good numbers coming in our kindergarten group. I'll take you to the total part also to point out that in the very top one of year 2004 for the total, it's 15,649 if everybody's there. If you go down to the 2011 and 12 year, we were at 15,639. We're down 10 students in all of those years as we fluctuate. So really, there's not a huge, it's been lately that we have been seeing the decline. And so when we look at trends, you also have to look at that. You have to look at, well, is the, the wave in and up and down? But really, when I've had a couple comments of just, this has been happening for a long time. Well, not necessarily. Our enrollment numbers are pretty steady. It's just in the last 5 years, and so we've been working on the things. We do see on the next page, talks a little bit about where we're seeing and this is a very good document that Dawn put together, shows from kindergarten to first grade how many students we've lost each year from first to second grade. At the bottom does averages, and so you'll see on average we lose 33 kindergarten students from kindergarten to first grade. Now that's with 1,000 kids coming in, 1,000 going out, and if you when they say that's really noticeable, but when you're talking about schools, you're talking about 2 kids in each elementary. So if I have 85 kindergartners I'm now at 83, it's not very noticeable, but that number just adds up, of course. And so when you say you see huge impacts, it's not that noticeable, and I say that from a standpoint of a school may not see a huge difference in their class sizes because if it's steadied out. One little typo at the very top, it shows grades 9 to 10. It says that twice, where it's 10 to 11 and 11 to 12, just for you to make if your copy is the same as mine. I think it just got saved there. So what we do see is we gain kids back from 8th to 9th grade. So from a steady standpoint, we do in the high school, if you look at the last 4 columns from 8th to 9th, we're up 30 kids, up 1, down 20, down 21. So for the high school stage, we're pretty much up enrollment, and that's stayed pretty steady over the years. We get an influx of whether it would be homeschool kids or parochial schools kids coming in, but we've get an influx into the high school. Our middle school students, if I refer to the previous document, we lose kids from 5th to 6th grade. That's what the data tells us. Then once they're here in 6th grade, pretty much that 6th grade class to our senior class is pretty much a cohort that number's pretty steady. So if they're here in 6th grade and went through our schools in 6th grade, they pretty much graduate with us, or at least that number of students graduate with us. We are losing some at the elementary, and that's what the numbers say before there. But again, when we see these are huge numbers. You're talking about a couple kids in a grade and a couple kids at each elementary. And so, a school is not going to all of a sudden go, boy, we're down a whole section. It's going to be a couple kids here or there. So trying to look at, as you'd say, the reasons why that's happening, that's a different question. I was really looking at where am I seeing the bubbles, where is this coming through? And Dawn, this was we had a random conversation about this probably 2 months ago, and Dawn did some awesome work to put this together to be able to look at cohort groups, which is, I think, going to give us more information as we move forward. And I didn't want to overdo too much mathematical stuff, so if you have questions for me on those 2 pages, I'm willing to answer them for you.
Can you make an algorithm?
No, I cannot. I can see where the holes are, and I can put X's on those, so no.
So if there's no questions of Mr. Scott, charts 7 and 8 are actually the ones we've just seen, but instead of percentages, they're the numbers of students. So they relate to the other 2 we had seen. And Mike Maloney was working with the city and doing some independent work to address some of the issues about other districts and cities and some of the things that might influence population changes. So, Mike?
Well, part of our whole long-range planning process includes all of this demographic work that Don does. It includes the enrollment projections. that we get from the Department of Ed each year, and some of our own analysis. And of course, we want to answer some of the questions you have answered. I meet regularly with the city planning director and his staff and economic development department staff, and we look at housing starts and all of the demographic data that the city uses in its planning effort. I actually get a copy of every development application that goes into the city, commercial or residential, and have the opportunity to comment to staff on those applications. But we also use that to try to understand where housing development is increasing, and we have heat maps. You've seen some of those that the city has generated showing where the housing starts are and the housing type. If you look across the top of this graph, the question, of course, was asked about, well, why the differences between Davenport, Bettendorf, Eldridge, and North Scott for this purpose is in, or Pleasant Valley, I mean, is included with Bettendorf. One of the things we look at is the school-age population, age 5 to 19. Only about 20% of households have school-age children. And that's pretty much true in most districts nationwide. We look at the average household size, and you see that Davenport 2.38, Bettendorf is 2.42, and Eldridge is 2.55. So that suggests that among those households, that 20% of households with children, that those little tiny increments actually make a pretty large difference, particularly if you look at number of students per 10,000 households or that kind of rate data. If you move across there, we look at the number of occupied housing units, and our total population change. Davenport grew in this period by 2%, Bettendorf by 4.4%, Eldridge by 6.5%. But then look at the population percent change of age 5 to 19. We grew by 2%, but only 0.7% of that growth was population age 5 to 19. And our housing units increased by 1.2%, but if you move backwards to that 0.7% of age 5 to 19, you can see that the population growth that we are having in Davenport has a much lower rate of school-age children than the population growth that are occurring in the neighboring communities. The makeup of families generally has been changing for several decades. 2016, the U.S. had the lowest native birth rate since the CDC has kept that statistic. All of our population growth nationally is via immigration. Our actual birth rate is the lowest it has been. People are waiting much longer. We have the census data on this, waiting much longer to start families and having fewer children than has been true years ago. And all of this helps us to understand why the population growth that we have in Davenport isn't having the same rate of population growth of persons aged 5 to 19 as our neighboring district. It relates to housing stock, types of housing starts. Many of our housing starts the past decade have been lofts and apartments and things of that, more than single-family homes. And then we have to recognize that even among single-family homes, only about 20% of those single-family homes have school-age children. So all of this contributes to the demographic that makes up our community. And all of this suggests that changes in family structure and demographics are a larger part of the decline in school-age children in the city than something that the district is doing to not attract people, because we are a growing community. It's simply that our rate of growth of school-age children is lower than that of our neighbors, and the we're still working on, well, what are the reasons for that? And part of that is working with both the planning and economic development staff at the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Development Association, all of those folks who are interested in these numbers. And of course, these numbers all inform our thinking about the long-range plan vis-a-vis enrollment capacity. We still have several thousand empty seats, and we, of course, want to make sure we have plenty of capacity for the future for that growth that ultimately will occur. We know that the demographic data suggests at some point the rate of decline will slow down, and we should actually start to have some small rate of growth once the current trend normalizes. And that's what all of the data that we find with our planning partners and the economic development folks suggest to us. Finally, you see the number of homes built in the lower left-hand corner. In 2016, 85 new homes. In Davenport, 71 of those were in our school district. 14 in Bettendorf school district, but 105 in city of Bettendorf boundaries, meaning they're Pleasant Valley. And then, of course, 35 in Eldridge. Now, the thing to say about those raw numbers is the rate of development per 10,000 population is much higher in those cities than in Davenport, where our population is 100,000. So that's the economic development data, and if there are any questions about that or the other things we're doing, we all will try to answer.
If I may ask a question.
So is that the end of the presentation?
No, we have Rachel to go.
Okay. Yeah, so if you want to ask questions of Mr. Maloney, go
Yes.
ahead.
So I think at the height of our highest student population, it was 19,000, give or take a few there. I don't know the exact number.
Yes, 1998, we were just over 19,000.
And so it has taken 17 years, basically, give or take, or whatever, 19, for us to get to the level that we're at. So with all parameters in line, how long would it take us at the rate we're going to get, I wouldn't say back to 19, but at least a respectable additional amount of students to support the district that we need? And I know that's a wide open, I don't expect you to have numbers. That's not what I'm asking.
We have a lot of discussion about that.
Projection-wise, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, 10 years?
I have been trying to figure out how to model that, because I think that there will be a bottom out of the rate of decline, and some slow growth will start to occur at some point. That's my opinion. I haven't got the math to demonstrate that.
So reading your chart, we lost 272 students this school year. Is that right? Or I mean last school year?
Last school year.
Okay. Is there a way to know, I don't know how I want to say this, is it a particular area that these students live in, or a particular school that they should be going to but they're enrolling out of? I mean, is there a way to know that? If it's concentrated on certain areas or schools where we need to focus some more attention on, or is it just even across the board?
Quite honestly, I think we'd have to research that a little deeper to see exactly where those students ended up. I know we have it broken down as far as in-state, and Dawn has that, but as far as the students where they're at in the district, we only had open enrolled 16 students out. So only 16 students would actually have left the district that are living in the district.
And that's just because we have the
open enrollment, the diversity plan.
Diversity plan.
Right.
But otherwise, how many of those students that are applying for it, you know, do they live in a particular area, a particular school, or?
So we've done mapping on the open enrollment requesters, and yes, there are pockets and certain neighborhoods, and obviously the northeast and the northern edge. So some of it is proximity to other districts, but there certainly are different neighborhoods that.
Okay, so it's
show up.
neighborhoods as well as possibly the schools or something, or
I don't know that it is school as much as it is potentially proximity to other communities. When we ran the numbers against schools, we had some assumptions about poverty playing a part, or and we found open enrollment requests across the board.
okay, thank you.
Since you've started talking, why don't you launch into the marketing efforts and what we're doing and what questions we're asking?
So a part of our role is to dig in on what is the data telling us, to work with the experts on understanding the data, and where we're able to actually respond to the data. How much of this is a consumer choice that we're seeing here, and how much is that consumer choice actually impacting housing potentially? And so it's a pretty difficult question to answer sometimes, but there are some commonalities that we focus our work on. And a couple of those is kind of where we're gaining ground, which seems to be our kindergarten did tip this last year. We're hoping that's a trend. We're seeing better retention at the elementary level than in the past. And we're decreasing the loss we typically have seen in the Iowa public districts and the homeschooling numbers. We're losing ground primarily on that out-of-state piece and those movers. And that seems to be the largest of the decline that we're seeing, because in most of the other areas we've actually stemmed the loss in some of those traditionally declining numbers. So our focus starting 3-4 years ago was very much on the transition years. You can see that very clearly in the data on the open enrollment requests that we get in, but also in the enrollment trends themselves. Rob mentioned the transition years. You see them standing out in that chart. We also work very closely with our realty and relocation professionals and continue that work to make sure that we understand the factors that are impacting the decisions of those new movers and the choices that they're being offered. And then the open enrollment requesters, because the lesson we've learned on our open enrollment numbers is that though we have policy supports that are in place, those numbers are reflective of a consumer demand, and we do lose those families even if they're not accepted through open enrollment. Last year we lost about 1/3 of those folks through moving private school enrollment and other sources. So even though they may be declined through open enrollment, they may ultimately leave us. And so we are looking very much at the continuation numbers and some of the other factors within the open enrollment. I think Dawn's work has kind of opened our eyes on some of those opportunities to be working more directly on continuation numbers. So I've got a lot of notes and a lot of strategies that we can talk about. I think you're pretty familiar with the tools that we're using, but I'll hit on a couple of those. The focus on the transition years with our kindergarten and early elementary families, continuing with the preschool radio, social media. We do direct mail packages out to all of our 4-year-olds, not just those attending Children's Village, but our partner sites as well, to encourage them to consider a Davenport elementary school, 900 plus pieces on that. We're working with our elementary schools on what a kindergarten roundup looks like and moving that communication much earlier in the year. Bill and I just talked today. We're confirming the early March dates on roundup as well. And then the high school transition, which you see a lot of focus on right now with our orientations for our freshmen. So a lot of that focuses on District of Distinction. I don't know if we should pause for a question or if you'd like me to continue.
Well, the superintendent asked the board to interrupt you, so.
Okay.
Right in here.
So, well, wait a minute, Director Beck. Well, it doesn't matter, I'm calling on you.
He's just mad at me.
I don't know if you guys have the answer to this, but one thing I was thinking about with the kindergarten and early elementary, do we know how much of that is related to special education? How much of those changes? Because I know, that's sort of the time when diagnoses occur and people start looking at the services they're getting and maybe making those decisions, or if students aren't diagnosed with issues, and they should be, we see issues happening in the classroom, and so the parents may want to take them out. Do we know anything about how our special education numbers trend with these numbers, or is we kind of, right now, we're just lumping everybody together?
We would have to look at it.
Okay.
We have a tendency to believe that we're actually a magnet with our special needs families because of the depth of the services and the offerings in Davenport. I mean, we had a campaign several years ago called Think Big, and it really is, whether we don't feel it every day, but we are resource rich compared to many of the districts around us. So we're probably more of a magnet than actually losing enrollment there. Yeah.
I had a question about the pre-K.
Please.
Okay, and I kind of talked about this at the last meeting. So if we have our partner sites, I didn't know that Davenport Schools was involved with all that. So how many of those kids, because I know you said you do advertising for that, but I never saw it at all. I mean, I have a preschooler, and we kept her in Davenport Schools because how would I look sending my kid to something else? Had I known, and I talked about this, it would have been cheaper for me to go that route. But how many of those kids that go to those partner sites do we just lose right out of the gate? Because now they got you in there, they got you sucked into their program, even though we essentially helped you get those kids away from us. And I already made a board request on that anyway, so.
Good. I'm glad, because we do need to dig in on it. I mean, we have an awareness that private school enrollment at the elementary level is trending upward, and certainly the number of slots that are being funded through the statewide voluntary preschool program is trending upward.
Mm-hmm.
We've looked at whether those are all resident students. They are not all resident students, so not all of them would be Davenport school kids, potentially. So it's an area of interest. Now, that said, it certainly is offset in the good to students and the kindergarten readiness that those dollars have brought to students, and regardless of which kindergarten classroom they land in. But yes, it certainly appears to be a factor.
Okay, thank you.
If there's nothing else, Rachel,
Okay,
you can continue.
So high school years, you're probably seeing a lot of focus on right now because of the high school orientation, the freshman orientation sessions, class of 2022 sessions are going on right now. We have a heavy focus on Facebook and social media for that promotion. It's really one of our only ways to reach our private school families in particular. So we really try to push and target our Facebook advertising very much around homeschool and our private school families. We also actively promote the part-time and dual enrollment options that are available, because we do have a lot of private school families that are very interested in the rich curriculum that our high schools offer, and that is an option for our families. So we try to really promote the flexibility that's available to them. We focus heavily on the District of Distinction models, obviously, and other differentials of our high schools. And then, of course, we've got our graduation video. We do a lot of work with our graduates and testimonials. As Rob said, our high schools really, they're our flagships. They do attract, they do tip what is normally kind of a onward loss as the cohorts move through the system. High schools where we really turn the tides in those numbers. So one of our challenges is looking at how to bring that same response to our intermediate level schools, and it's something we spend a lot of time talking about, the depth of the programming that we're starting to see in our intermediate schools with Project Lead the Way in Every School, and the rich electives and after school and clubs and leadership, and how do we start to tell that story better in the same way that our high schools have that cachet. How do we assign some of that to our intermediates? And so we're launching a Testimonials Campaign, kind of a spark campaign, to really try to draw our current families and alumni out, and when did they first start to experience that spark of interest in their careers or in leadership or other areas. So we'll be working on an intermediate focus for that. So new movers are one area that kind of transcend those transition years because they come in and out of our community. The numbers show you there is a lot of mobility between these communities. We do see open enrollment in and out. We see a lot of movement. So it's working closely with those realty professionals, relocation offices. We're going to be working more closely with the city in particular on trying to reach those employers and relocation offices. They get it from every direction on the school districts, promoting their work and their offerings. So we do try to work more strategically, including working with the Quad City Realty Association, and we are contributing toward a promotional piece that they'll be putting together in the future. So a lot of the work that you see here is through the events, but also more quietly through the Welcome Center and the relationship that they have with realtors. We do contribute to all the relocation packets, so there's print materials for every new mover that's considering the Quad Cities area. They receive a print piece on the Davenport Community Schools, a lot of direct mail for our new movers. Once they've got one of those housing starts, we know it through the county assessor's office, and they receive a piece from us regarding the Davenport Community Schools. Work on the greatschools.org site and other social media that's out there impacting new mover decisions. All of that kind of tied together with some of the work going on with the city and expanding those efforts around some FAM tours. And then the open enrollment requesters is a third kind of focus for us. You see in those numbers that the cumulative numbers of open enrollment requests out are declining, and those cumulative numbers of open enrollment requesters in are increasing over the trend. So we're having some impact here. The continuation is a piece that we're very interested in because we don't know that all of our families are aware of or that our schools are actively promoting that option. When they find out that they have a student that's not returning to school and that they're moving, is there an active discussion going on around the continuation option, and can we keep that family in our schools, not just for the enrollment, but for the educational continuity for our students. So it's a piece that we're going to be focusing heavily on. In addition to the transition years and the social media and all of the work going on, how are we looking at that open enrollment discussion? Who's communicating with those families? How are we tracking that? We do a little bit of work with the Welcome Center in the follow-up, but those families are generally pretty hesitant to talk with us. When we can, we get them in for a tour. We try to make that connection with the principal. And it is amazing, Dawn and I just today were talking about that, you know, even our open enrollment requests that have been approved, some of those families choose to stay with us because we have had a relationship established with them. And that's really what it's about in our schools. So that's kind of the focus for us in this work. We're keeping up the work and still trying to learn from the data and learn from other districts and learn more to improve our work.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Dawn, everybody. I won't have some wrap up. I mean, I asked a bunch of smart people, why are people leaving the district, meaning moving out, or why do they want to transfer out? Some of the reasons, we have a pretty strict transfer policy. We did that so that we would balance our schools, and I've been told that some people, if they can't choose their intermediate school, in some cases their elementary school, then they will move out of the district. Athletics is a reason, house choices in the city itself, child care arrangements, because that's the one that we hear most often when people want to transfer. Budget cuts, I mean, we're quite open and transparent about those. Perceptions of school safety and poverty in our district. A general lack of choice, again, because we have the diversity plan and we have our transfer policy. Some people say that we are too transparent. We talk too much about our poverty. We talk too much about our challenges. We talk too much about our budget cuts. And they've even recommended that the policy committee, for example, is a downer. That because we're working on that policy and we're having people talk about it all the time, that now we're bringing up the issue to others that we're a district of poverty and that causes major issues. And so there's some very interesting opinions out there about things that we should do in order to perhaps turn around this the trend. So what are some of the things we can do as examples? Let a parents attend any school they want to in the district. Now, as soon as you do that, you're going to cause pockets of poverty. You're not going to decrease it, but because only those that have transportation are able to choose their school. But that is one way to keep people from wanting to leave the district. Again, stop talking about poverty so much and just emphasize the positive things that we do. We could change our diversity plan, and so that we give more people the opportunity to go out, or you could conversely every time you have appeals, and we have 20 a year, approve every appeal. I mean, that's still, they're getting out, but again, maybe that makes a more positive attitude for the district. Use the health insurance reserve until we go down to the exact level where we shouldn't go below, and stop making any reductions in the budget. Continue to work with the city on neighborhood revitalization. Of course, we should do that. Reinstitute a zero tolerance discipline in our schools. We don't have that right now. We're very tolerant. We try to keep kids in the school. We have diversity teachers. We try to cut down suspensions. And some people, that gives us a negative perception about how we feel about discipline. So just don't do that anymore. When a kid messes up, they are out. And they're out for as long as we can keep them out, so that we have more stability within the classrooms. Spend $15,000 to $25,000 for a marketing study, because that's what it costs, to find out all these questions you asked tonight. And you can't do it for any less than that. And hope that the answers you get back are things that you can use. Continue to emphasize the district of distinction models and the great things we have going on in the district. I mean, this is frustrating to me, as you can tell. We do so much. There's not much more we can do, folks. There's some other things that have to change in order for us to stop losing our enrollment. That's it. And I'm glad the Times reporter left before that. But tomorrow the story's going to be a negative story about our enrollment, and many comments have been made here, because that's what it's going to be.
Yep. So this is a discussion item. That's the presentation, right? So are there comments, questions from the board? Director Beck.
I just want to say thank you for presenting this to us, because it's actually really informative. I know I ask a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate all of this information, and I think it's really helpful. And I agree, we are doing a lot of really good things. We just need to make it known. So,
Director Hayes.
It was really helpful for me in actually seeing the raw numbers. You know there's a decline, but to actually see it and compare it to the previous years, that was very helpful for me. And actually to know all the things that we're doing to try to fix it, but we're just not there yet.
Director DeSalvo.
I concur with what Director Beck just said, that there are so many good things happening and you just don't hear about it. And I say shout from the rooftops all the time, but my son's a product of the Davenport Community Schools. I can tell you at the University of Iowa, half of their band, or whatever, the drum line, are Davenport Community School graduates. And I sit there and I point them all out, and it's amazing the places these kids are going, the things they're doing because of where they started. And I don't know how to get that word out. I would love to see cameras in our schools every single day, seeing the things that Dr. Tate mentions all the time that he sees in the weekly report. Do we send that weekly report to the Times or the TV stations? I mean, maybe we should send our newsletter, because it's got huge success stories every single week in a different school. All the different schools are mentioned, and maybe some of that would get covered. I don't know, but I get frustrated with the media. I'm not saying that's the problem, but I think the good things need to be shouted, the good things need to be celebrated, and the good things need to be shown, because hopefully that would help. Then people want to be here or stay here. So thank you, too, for all the work, because that's a lot of data. Very helpful.
Anybody else? Director Gosa.
I just want to thank you guys. It was very informative. And Dawn, I can't believe Rob made you limp all the way up here and didn't offer to carry you. Shame on him.
Anybody else? Director Mayfield.
I think many times you hear me speak of what's not happening in our school district. And probably not often enough do I talk about the good things, because I hear all the good things from everyone else here. And so I think I'm just another squeak when I talk about those good things. And I'm sure people want to hear just the good things. But the things that I talk about is going, I like to think, make the district a better district for all. You know, you hear this so often, that we all rise with the tide. And that's not necessarily so. I'm very fortunate. I went to Davenport schools. My family entirely went to Davenport schools. And we have all benefited because of the Davenport schools and because of the great teachers that we've had here, the great curriculums, the great encouragement. All of those things is a result of the Davenport schools and our interaction with it. So I never want you to think that I'm not appreciative of the Davenport schools. I've been involved with them for 40 years. And that's whether I was getting paid or not. I've seen superintendents come and go. I've seen boards come and go. But I've still been sitting down there in these schools doing the same thing for 40 years because I appreciate and love what the Davenport schools have been able to do for people. You know, we always hear about it, that the key to upward mobility, sometimes I wonder what up is, because we all have a different standard, what up is, whether that means academically, financially. But to me, upward mobility means being able to take care of your family and having the greatest opportunity to do that. And that means being able to get an education so you have choices that you can make in life. And I think Davenport schools touches everyone's life. Whether it touches it negative or positive, many times is up to that person. But that's what I like to work for. Not that I'm not appreciative of those that do the work every day, because that's the key that makes the difference. But at the same time, I know that sometimes we have a little different focus on who needs what, and we definitely many times disagree as to how we're going to make that happen for everyone. Some of us think feeding them more is going to make it work. Giving them more recreation is going to give them work, is going to work for them. I think that the quality education that they get, that the tools that they have to deal with what's coming in the next 10 or 20 years in their life is what makes the difference. So in the future, I hope you don't think because I talk about what's not happening that I'm not encouraging what is happening, because we have many great things that are going on in the Davenport School District. But somebody has to speak of those things that we don't talk about. And I deal with that every day outside the school system. And not that I'm right on all of these things, but I think it needs to be brought to the table to talk about and discuss. So thank you for what you're doing.
Anybody else? Well, we're just about done then. I just want to remind the board members again that our administrators are really, really busy. They're doing a lot of work. The superintendent expressed his frustration at some of this. There were a lot of suggestions that were made about what we might do about it. But again, if there are requests for information or for agenda items, please make those requests, because just because we ask for the information in a board meeting doesn't mean that that's an expression by the board, and it doesn't mean that the administration will address those issues. So I just want to be really, really clear on that. If there's nothing else, Director Mayfield.
No,
did you
no.
have some? Okay.
I'm good.
We'll move on to administrative reports. Are there any?
None tonight?
All right, thank you. We do have a number of board requests. First is from Director Gosa, today's date agenda item. I would like to discuss the number of students that attend preschool at the different area schools that are funded by Davenport schools. Do they attend Davenport schools after preschool? Why are you requesting this? I think it is important to know if this arrangement costs the district future students. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this agenda item? Within reason. Next is Director Gosa, today's date, agenda item. I'd like to know the priority that athletics have within the district. Why are you requesting this information? I feel athletic programs play a vital role in the district's enrollment numbers. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information or agenda item? ASAP. Next is a board request from Director Gosa, today's date, agenda item. I would like the policy committee to discuss the expulsion policy. Why are you requesting this agenda item? Because I feel it is important as the number of expulsions increase that we discuss this policy. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this agenda item? ASAP. Board request from Director DeSalvo, today's date, information request. How much money has been spent on each high school buildings and facilities over the last 15 years? Can this be listed by project at each school? Why are you requesting this information? Review of 10-year building plan is coming up, and this information will help to make informed and equal decisions for that planning. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information? ASAP. Board request from Director Johansson, today's date. It's an information request. I apologize, I'm writing on the back side of a sheet. Description of the request. Please explain the district's responsibility for transportation of continuation education students from other districts who live in Davenport. Why are you requesting this information? Because without knowing more, it appears on the surface to be very unfair to the Davenport district. Is there a second?
Second.
And whenever there's time. Last request is from Director Johansson, today's date. Information request. How much rebate contributions has the district made to Mid-American, and how much in rebates has the district received back from Mid-American? Why are you requesting this information? So that the board can and the district can understand rebates and their value and urgency relative to the contributions that the district is making to Mid-America for those rebates. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information? Whenever there's time. All right. I think that's about it. So may I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned.